The ballroom
Ladies and
glittered under
gentlemen,
golden chandeliers as the
welcome
Atlanta
to
elite
this
gathered for
magnificent
Richard
evening.
Donovan's annual charity gala. Waiters glided between guests carrying trays of champagne. Laughter mingled with the sound of violins. An expensive perfume filled the air. Richard, a millionaire businessman known for his arrogance, stood at the center of it all in his tailored suit, wearing a proud, detached smile. The evening was supposed to raise funds for a local orphanage, though everyone knew Richard's real goal was to polish his public image. Asterisk across the room, a group of orphans had been invited to perform a small musical number for the guests. Among them stood Amara, an 11-year-old black girl with bright eyes, tightly curled hair, and shoes that had clearly seen better days. She stood apart from the others, mesmerized by the couples gliding across the dance floor. She whispered to her friend, "They look like they're floating." Asterisk, her innocent voice reached Richard's ears as he sipped his drink. He turned, smirking. "You think you could dance like that, kid?" He asked loud enough for everyone around him to hear. A few guests chuckled. Asterisk Amara's cheeks burned. "Maybe if I tried," she replied softly. Asterisk Richard laughed. "If you can dance this waltz without tripping, I'll adopt you myself." His tone dripped with mockery. The guests gasped. Some smiled awkwardly. Others turned away. To them, it was just another cruel joke from a rich man who thought he owned the room. Asterisk Amara froze. The pianist looked uncertain, his fingers hovering above the keys. Sister Mary, the head of the orphanage, started to step forward to stop it, but Amara raised her hand. "I'll do it," she said quietly. Asterisk, the music began again, slow and haunting. Amara stepped onto the polished floor, her heart thundering. For the first few beats, her movements were stiff, clumsy. The crowd whispered, expecting her to fail. But then something beautiful happened. She closed her eyes and let the music carry her. Her steps softened. Her body began to flow with the rhythm. And suddenly, the shy little girl was no longer afraid. Asterisk, she twirled gracefully, her thin dress swirling with each spin. Her arms moved like the wind, her face glowing with quiet confidence. The room fell silent. Even the skeptical guests couldn't look away. Asterisk Richard Donovan stood frozen, his smirk gone. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest. Admiration, guilt, and maybe a hint of shame. Asterisk, when the final note faded, Amara stopped and bowed. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the entire ballroom erupted into applause. Tears filled Amara's eyes as she smiled nervously. Asterisk Richard clapped slowly, still stunned. "Well," he murmured, almost to himself, "I guess a promise is a promise." Asterisk, in that single moment. A mocking challenge had turned into something far greater. The beginning of a story that neither of them could have ever imagined. The morning after the gala, the sun rose over Atlanta, painting the city in gold. Richard Donovan sat in his office, sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The sound of Amara's footsteps and the image of her brave, glowing face refused to leave his mind. For years, he had built walls of pride and arrogance around himself. But last night, one little girl had cracked them open with nothing but a dance. Asterisk by noon, Richard found himself standing outside St. Mary's Home for Children. The building was old, but full of life, laughter, running feet, and the faint smell of crayons drifted through the windows. When he knocked, Sister Mary appeared, surprised to see him. "Asterisk, Mr. Donovan," she said cautiously. "We weren't expecting you again so soon." Asterisk, "I came to see the girl," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "Amara?" Asterisk, Sister Mary's brows rose. "Are you here to donate, sir?" Asterisk Richard hesitated. "No. I'm here because I made her a promise." Asterisk inside. Amara was helping another child tie his shoes when she saw him standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened, and for a moment fear crossed her face. She thought maybe he had come to take back his cruel joke. Asterisk, but Richard knelt down, meeting her gaze. "You danced beautifully," he said softly. "And I don't break my promises." Asterisk. The room fell silent. Sister Mary's eyes softened as she realized he meant it. "Still," she warned, "adoption isn't a game, Mr. Donovan. It's a commitment." Asterisk Richard nodded. "I'm aware. I lost my wife years ago. And I've been living like a man with no reason to breathe. Maybe it's time that changed. Asterisk weeks passed as the adoption process began. Richard visited. Often, sometimes bringing books, sometimes just sitting quietly while Amara drew pictures of dancers and stars. Slowly, she began to smile around him. He even laughed once, something his staff hadn't heard in years. Asterisk finally. One rainy afternoon, Amara stepped through the grand doors of Richard's mansion for the first time. She looked up in awe at the marble staircase and crystal chandeliers. It was nothing like the noisy, crowded orphanage. It felt too quiet. It's too big. Asterisk, this is your home now, Richard said gently. Asterisk, she nodded, but clutched her old teddy bear tightly, whispering, "Do I really belong here?" Asterisk, Richard's throat tightened. "You do," he said, almost in a whisper. "More than anyone." Asterisk, the days that followed were slow and awkward. She missed her friends. He didn't know how to talk to a child. But little by little, they found moments of connection, morning, breakfasts, shared laughter over burnt pancakes, and evening walks in the garden. Asterisk, one night, Richard heard music coming from the ballroom. Found Amara dancing alone, the same waltz from the gala echoing softly from the old piano. He stood in the doorway, tears welling in his eyes. Asterisk it was then, he realized. She hadn't just brought joy into his house. She had brought life back into his heart. Asterisk. Years passed, like the turning of soft pages in a cherished book. The once timid little girl who had danced in worn shoes was now a graceful young woman with confidence in every step. Amara Donovan, now 17, had blossomed under Richard's care. The mansion that once echoed with loneliness was filled with laughter, piano melodies, and the sound of dreams taking flight. Asterisk, Richard watched her grow with pride that words could never capture. He attended every recital, clapped the loudest at every performance, and kept a framed picture of her first ballet show on his desk. She had become his entire world, not by blood, but by the pure bond of love and redemption. Asterisk, one spring afternoon. An envelope arrived in the mail with the seal of the New York Academy of Performing Arts. Amara's hands trembled as she opened it. "Dad," she whispered, tears filling her eyes, "I got in." Asterisk, Richard stood frozen for a moment. He knew this day would come, the day she would step into the world on her own. Pride swelled in his chest, but behind his smile. His heart ached with the thought of letting her go. Asterisk, that evening, he threw a small celebration in her honor. The staff, neighbors, and a few close friends gathered in the same ballroom where it all began. The chandeliers sparkled just like that night years ago. A live band played soft music, and the atmosphere was filled with love and bittersweet joy. Asterisk, when the band began to play the same waltz from that fateful night. "One last dance, Dad?" Asterisk, Richard hesitated. Age had slowed him, and his movements were no longer as sure. But when she reached out her hand, he took it without a second thought. The guests stepped aside as father and daughter moved to the center of the floor. Asterisk, the melody began. Slowly, gracefully, they started to waltz. Amara guided him with a gentle smile, her hand firm in his. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The chandeliers shimmered above them, and the music carried them through memories the night of her first dance. The day she came home, the laughter, the tears, the countless moments that had built their bond. Asterisk, "You remember this song?" She whispered. Asterisk, "How could I forget?" Richard replied, his voice thick with emotion. "It changed my life." Asterisk, she rested her head against his chest. "No, Dad, you changed mine." Asterisk, when the song ended, the crowd applauded softly, many wiping their tears. Richard looked at Amara, his heart full. "You've made me proud, sweetheart," he said. "Now go chase your dreams, and never stop dancing." Asterisk, Amara smiled through tears. "I'll carry you in every step." Asterisk. As she left for New York weeks later, Richard stood on the porch watching her taxi disappear down the long driveway. He felt both empty and full, because, in loving her, he had found himself again. Asterisk, and somewhere deep inside, he knew that waltz wasn't just a dance. Asterisk, it was the moment of broken souls found home in each other.